Hello world, this is Shruti Pandey, and today I have with me yet another amazing guest, Stephen Shedletzky, who's the founder of Shed Inspires. Stephen, you taking your time out of a busy schedule, you're touring. I know how much of a painstaking effort it is to get you on a podcast, but I'm so happy that you're finally here and you've been contributing to creating leaders for very many years without making you sound very old. But thank
You
you so
you
much.
can make me sound old. That's all right.
So yeah, he's been helping create leaders. He's been helping create humans, as I see, since more than a decade. And I love your, I don't know what to call it, vision, mission, or motto, or maybe three of them, where he basically says that if you listen, they speak. So I'm all ears to listening to you so that you speak to me and the audience.
Thank you, Shruti. It's a pleasure to be with you, and thanks for your patience in making this happen. I know we had some scheduling challenges, but we are here. So delighted to be here with you.
Good things take time.
Sometimes, yes, yeah, for sure.
So, do you want to say a couple of words, or shall I get into the three questions that I've curated for you?
The one thing that just came to mind, I thought it was funny. You said that I've been creating humans, which very literally I have created two humans with my wife. We have two kids. But yeah, I mean, my passion is in helping humble leaders grow and helping leaders become more humble too. And the way that I define being humble or having humility is that you realize that you have something to do with the problems that you experience. Like if you're willing to point your fingers at yourself, not take more responsibility than you should, I think then you can become meek. Yeah, the greatest leaders that I've met and worked with own their impact on other people, whether it's intended or not. And so that's the work I love helping leaders do, because when leaders grow, so do their organizations.
I've been following you for quite some time now, and which is why I used that statement. I hope that was apt in summarizing your introduction, because I feel, and correct me if I'm wrong, you can't be a leader if you are not human first. It's how I look.
Yeah, I mean, leadership is really interesting because you have people who, so I was just asked this question this morning of, is being a thought leader the same as being a leader? Is being a visionary the same thing as being a leader? And I think the answer is a definite maybe. So I'll take from my great friend Rich Diviney, who's a retired US Navy SEAL. He wrote the book, The Attributes. He has one of, I think, the best quotes on what it means to be a leader, which is leaders aren't born, leaders aren't made, leaders are chosen based upon the way that they behave. So some of us are born with some of the innate attributes of what it means to be a leader. Some of us are born with greater empathy and authenticity and vulnerability and compassion and decisiveness, and ownership and responsibility. Some of us are born with more of those attributes and have a greater propensity to develop them, but it doesn't make you a leader. Leadership is in the eye of the followers. I can't call myself a leader, just like I can't call myself good looking or funny, right? You can call me that, right? And you're right. I can find confidence in my skills and confidence in myself. In fact, I think that's a key piece to leadership, is that leaders are secure in themselves, of their strengths, of their weaknesses, a willingness to explore their blind spots and constantly grow and improve. But yeah, leaders are chosen based upon the way that they behave.
Suddenly I feel, do I really have to ask three questions? I have like so much to talk to, like so much.
We'll fit in as much as we can in our time.
Yeah. And you got some amazing words there, not just thought leadership, but I am kind of, I'm sorry to say, pissed with the word which calls themselves as, servant leader or servant leadership. And I don't even understand, like, do you want to highlight or talk about servant leadership? Like, Is that another
So
stuff? Or what
is
is it?
that another, what is that, fluff, did you say?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm with you in the sense that I don't think there should be a difference between servant leadership and leadership.
Right.
I think it is one and the same.
Right.
And so part of the challenge we have with leadership is that we don't have a standard definition of the term. And while leadership may look different in certain contexts, one of the reasons we have all of these other terms, servant leadership, visionary leadership, thought leadership, all these things, is because we don't really have a standard definition. And I think if we don't have a standard definition, we exacerbate an issue. So I'm writing 3 chapters in the book that I'm writing right now called Speak Up Culture on leadership defined, select better leaders, and then support leaders better. So I think organizations or society, ought to articulate, this is what we mean by a leader. This is how you behave, which then creates selection criteria of, we then ought to pick, select, warn people when offering them a promotion. By the way, this is what it means should you accept this job. This is the expectation. And then if you violate that expectation, you shouldn't be fit to lead, right? We elect, appoint, select leaders to represent the best interest of the collective, of the group. If the leader doesn't represent the best interest of the group, they may not be fit to lead that group. And then further, we need to support leaders better. So there's a Harvard Business Review study that showed that there's a 12-year gap between when the average manager gets their first management role, age 29, and when they receive their first management training, age 41.
Oh gosh. Oh God.
So I think we need to define leadership. We need to select leaders against that definition, and then support people who are either in positions of leadership or who simply wish to lead.
Right. So I'm not sure if you guys have this culture in the US where before a managerial role, you're given a transitory phase where you're a lead, So for instance, that I come from a technology background. So from my junior to senior roles, and then I get into a lead solution architect or a lead technology or whatever, and then a manager phase. And after having spent some time in the leader or the lead role, I feel like it's really unnecessary. I'm not sure, like for the person to really prove it again that, okay, I am a manager and I need to be given the manager thing. Do you think in the current era, there is really no need of that transitory phase? Because all the while we're supposed to, show those signs of the next step, the next level.
I mean, I like this notion that if you're in a particular role and want another or the next, begin to behave in a way that shows that you're ready for it.
Right.
So, and whether that shows up in the function of lead role or not, I think that might be more just structure and hierarchical and maybe industry or company dependent. I'm a really big fan though of, like, there was a time where I got a promotion into a chief of staff role, and I was kind of already doing the role. And so it was the first time we ever created a chief of staff role.
Yeah.
And so it kind of came up, and I raised my hand and I said, I'd love to do it. I think I'd be good at it. And they're like, yeah, you've kind of already been doing it. And so now it doesn't always happen that way or that clear cut, but I'm a really big fan of do the job you have at hand and behave and level up to where you want to go. Earn it, as opposed to expect it.
Makes sense. And I love one of your quotes, which is every success is a 10 years in the making. Like,
oh yeah,
I'm not quoting this right, but I literally shared this as a post like 8-9 months back because I loved it so much.
Yeah.
So
It's,
if
I think that it's every overnight success is
yes.
10 years in the making. Yeah.
How did that come to you, or is it just your experience that you transcribed into that sentence?
Both. I first heard that idea from Simon Sinek, who's a colleague and a friend. Um, uh, yeah, and I just think it's true. I think more often than not, it's like a bamboo, right? The bamboo is the plant that takes tons of time to sprout, but
Yeah.
once it does, it shoots and grows really quickly. And
Yeah.
I think more often than not, every single person, even if they are, a quote unquote child phenom, usually takes a lot of work, that 10,000 hours or 10 years in the making, typically.
Yeah, I think I had just crossed that 10 years mark, and that quote just hit me like so amazingly well that I was like, okay, yeah, right.
I
There's no
think it gives us patience. It gives us some patience and perspective that even if we've been at something for a year or 2 years, that's not so long.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, without doing any further ado, I wish to ask you the three questions that I have created for you. I mean, I can just go on talking to you. It is so effortless and so smooth, really. But I feel like asking you three questions. My first question being, you have been in the business of people for more than a decade, and it is not easy to bring a change. Is how I look at it. What
Hmm.
made you stick so long in this arena of people creating leaders or humans, as we were talking about earlier? What
Yeah.
made you stick so long?
So one, I'm 35, so I've been in the business of people for 35 years. Because I think we're all in the business of people. Every single one of us, as human beings, we always live this truth that we are always individuals, parts of groups. And the survival and thrival of our species depends on our ability to get along as a group. And so whether or not you consider yourself to be in the business of people, I think we're all in the business of people, because everyone deals with people unless you live on your own remotely in a mountain. But you probably still had to deal with people at some point in your life, and might have to do it again. So the answer for me is passion. So I remember my very first job out of business school um, was with a large corporate company that had just gone through a merger. And on my first day, 1,000 people were let go um, for post-merger synergies. And so I was walking in as many more people were walking out, and I joined an organization that was in a tumultuous time by virtue of what had just happened. And I saw the impact of that on individual contributors and middle managers, of the uncertainty, of the fear, of the lack of transparency, and how it not only impacted their productivity but also their health and well-being.
Yeah.
I saw increased incidence of cancer, of car accidents, of stress. Um, uh, some of it could be fluke, but in the little area of 30 people that I work with, I saw some crazy weird stuff. And I think it was a symptom of an unhealthy corporate culture. Now, I don't blame leaders. They were doing the best they could. But I think oftentimes, especially a certain type of leader who's been rewarded their entire career for knowing the answer and being right, when there's change and uncertainty and they don't know, as opposed to being vulnerable and sharing, here's what I know, here's what I don't know, here's my commitment to you.
Right.
There was no communication. And I've never heard of any relationship that got better with no communication, unless it was a toxic relationship. And so I just saw firsthand the impact
Mm.
of, it wasn't a toxic culture. It wasn't even an unhealthy culture. It was just kind of a culture left to its own devices, like waves in an ocean. They just let it happen. And culture needs to be led. Culture needs to be demonstrated and displayed, and the behavior of the senior leaders impact that culture more than the behavior of someone junior at the time. And so I got my itch for leadership and culture work through my education. And then when I got into it and I saw the real human impact, I mean, we know that our relationship with our boss has more of a direct impact than our relationship with our family doctor. Fact. And so this stuff really matters. That if you are in, regardless of the industry, if you are in a position of leadership, you are in a role that is either life feeding or life depleting. And I think leaders must be aware of the impact that they can have on people's livelihood and their well-being.
Wow, that was so impactful, and I can't thank you enough for using the exact amazing phrases, words, and it felt like every word was handpicked and so genuine, because I mean, I could see your journey, as you were telling me your story, and it felt like you are a godsend, that no matter how unfortunate that incident was, it was like your first dealing with the corporate world, whichever industry that might be, and your first day is actually not someone, but many of them last day, and oh wow. This is something crazy. Stephen, who are you? What are you? You're something else.
I'm just, I put on my pants the same way as you do every morning. So I'm just trying to do my part as you are as well.
So if I understand, it's that undying passion which is still making you work and strive no matter how hard the task is.
Yeah. And quite frankly, I want my kids, I have right now a 6 and 3-year-old. In 10 to 15 or 20 or however many years they go and start their career, I want them to join an organization and be surrounded by leaders who know the precious responsibility and opportunity and obligation that they have in the role that they're in. So I simply do this because I know the power, both positively or destructively, that healthy, good, or toxic leadership can have on people and society. And so this is my calling. I will do this work in whatever way, shape, or form for the rest of my life.
I'm not sure if I should be saying this, but in case there is any which way I can help you, please let me know. I know what you're talking about, because I don't have kids. I didn't get married yet, but being in India as a female, having a career or being a working woman or whatever you call it, that too for 10-11 years myself, like you mentioned about, there are narcissist people, there are toxic cultures, there's so many of them. There's literally a plethora of things, and the least I wanted or I saw was that no other young girl should ever be facing the kind of things that I had to go through, and at least that generation should get some benefits of my generation, and they should be standing on our shoulders in a good way, like, okay, these people did some good to us. So I know what you're talking, and in any way, if I can be of any help, you just let me know.
Thank you. You are helping, and I will keep that in mind. That's very, very kind. But thank you. Keep leading. Keep doing what you're doing to create a brighter and better future for those who follow in your footsteps.
So difficult. I don't know how you do that so easily with a smile.
Yeah, sometimes I'm not smiling. Believe me.
I understand. I definitely do. Which leads me to our second question for you. And since you mentioned your good friend's name, Simon, you've been working at the Simon Sinek Inc. for about 11 years now.
Yep.
And you have had very many opportunities and roles in being very instrumental there. I want to understand, what has been your biggest learning from that experience, if that's okay to ask?
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. And yeah, so I've been working with Simon and his team for close to 11 years. And it's been quite a ride. I'm very, very grateful for the time that I've spent with Simon, and I'm still involved in sharing his message, his IP, his message with audiences and clients, which is great fun and meaningful, good work. I would say so. So Simon himself has taught me a really valuable lesson that mentors of his have taught him, which is talk less, say more. That 2/3 of an answer is better than an answer and a half. And so Simon himself has really helped me both with direct intervention and just observing the way that he communicates, whether it's spoken word or written word, on how to get across a message with the fewest amount of words possible. I don't nail it all the time. It's not a natural strength, but I've seen the power and the importance of it in helping to get a message across effectively. So I'd say that's one. And then the other is Simon and Simon's company isn't immune to the very stuff that we talk about. That it's not automatic that just because we talk about an inspired, safe, and fulfilled world, that poof, just like that, it's going to be done internally to the company. In fact, we have to work extra hard to ensure that we live the message from the inside out. And so a huge learning for me is just the sheer importance of living what we preach from the inside out. It's something that I've strived to have done with him and his company for many years. And as I continue along on my journey, I will take that lesson and that striving everywhere I go. Because when you work in the business of leadership and people, it's like you're a wine company and you make crappy wine. Like you have to make, if you claim to be a wine company, you've got to make good wine. Like, unless it's like, hey, it's boxed wine and it's not going to be good. But I think we must, the stakes and the expectation is higher and more important to live what we preach from the inside out, because if we don't, we should stop.
Gosh. So I'm no wine expert, but I think again, you did, maybe it is not a natural thing, and it's definitely a difficult strength to have, saying less but speaking more, right? Something like
Yeah,
that.
talk less, say more.
Say
Yeah.
more. So does that mean that the wine with age and getting old tastes better or something like that? Like, again,
It can.
I didn't think so. What are you trying to suggest with the wine thing?
Well, with the wine thing is I just think that there's the good old saying that the shoe cobbler's child doesn't have shoes. And so I think oftentimes organizations we see this time and time and again with service or product-based companies, that the very thing they help with others with, they don't do themselves. And you have to, otherwise the existence of the organization is fragile. And so, yeah, I've just learned the importance of ensuring that we live what we preach from the inside out. I take that very seriously.
I take that very seriously too. You reminded me of my school days when we were taught to practice what we preach. Makes
Totally.
a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense. So now, understanding all your background even more with my audience, and that we've been talking about very many things, I have kept the best for last. And I want to understand what led to the foundation and starting off of Shed Inspires. How did that happen?
Yeah, thank you. So the founding of my own little company called Shed Inspires, it's myself and Alejandro working as a team, which is fantastic. It was born of personal experience. So I care deeply about people feeling listened to, heard, people tapping into their own voice and being able to share it. And the reason it's so deeply personal to me, I believe, Shruti, that so much of our purpose lives in what have we overcome or are overcoming, and then how can we help others overcome those same things. And so for me, it was sort of two factors. One is growing up with a stutter, with a speech impediment. I married a speech language pathologist, so good choice, not just for me, but for my kids. But I grew up and still deal with and work with having a speech impediment, having a stutter.
But it doesn't.
So, like, for example, that word stutter is a hard word for me to say. And so I just paused and breathed and gave myself a bit more space so that I didn't stutter on the word stutter. And oftentimes, if I'm nervous or tired or whatever it might be, it can be worse. And my stutter, I mean, I have a long history of many stutterers in my family. It is hereditary. It's often more prevalent in men than in women. Not sure why. And yeah, my stutter was never too bad or too severe, but once I sort of hit grade 2 and then grade 6, so in grade 6 I would have been 12, grade 2 I would have been, I guess, 8 or 9. I had some experiences where I realized, oh, I do have a stutter, and when you're aware of it, it can become worse.
Yeah.
And I had this moment in grade 6 where I couldn't say the word très in French class, which is like the third word you learn in French. Très bien, like everyone knows that one. It means very. And I couldn't say it in front of the entire class. And it was one of the most embarrassing moments of my life. I still have more to go. So let's see how more embarrassed I can get.
I hope
But
you
I knew
did ever because of those experiences in school. I'm just asking you this because I have a younger brother who has had a similar history, and again, with your journey, you reminded me of something which is very close to my heart. And I hope there were no bullying experience because of that. And sorry for
nothing.
probing too personal
That's
detail.
fine. There, I I was bullied, but I never had a bully. So there were sort of micro or acute, like, questions or attacks, sometimes totally innocent and with good intent, and sometimes not. But it was never so severe. And quite frankly, so by the time I turned 13 in grade 6 and I couldn't say the word très in French class, I knew I needed to get help. And so I then enrolled in a program in Toronto, here where I'm from, called the Speech and Stuttering Institute. And I went to like a summer camp for a month or so and worked on it and got skills and got strategies and built my confidence. And even better, I mean, I was the youngest person in that little cohort. It was myself at 13. There was one other kid from Ottawa who was 14, and then everyone else was older. There was one, mid 20-year-old guy he was fully educated, English first language, couldn't get a job because he couldn't perform in a job interview. There was another individual, first name George. He was Sri Lankan. His last name was very complicated, as many Sri Lankan last names are. He couldn't say his own last name. I remember distinctively a class where we helped him sound out every syllable of his name, and he was able to say his last name for the first time in his life, and he was in tears. And so I realized I didn't have it as bad as others, fortunately, and I learned strategies and helped build my confidence. But the most important thing is I began to help others. In fact, I developed a really nice friendship with this guy who was 26, double my age, and we formed a genuine friendship, and I helped him grow and get new skills and strategies and build his abilities and confidence. It was amazing. And so I saw for the first time service. So one piece that has led me to this line of work in psychological safety and helping people's voice be heard, and leaders helping others' voice be heard, and writing this book, Speak Up Culture, is because I know what it feels like to be voiceless. I've been there, and I'm sure many people have been there, with or without a speech impediment or a stutter. And then the other factor, which is also personal, and I think all leadership is born of personal experience, is I've been in relationships personally and professionally where there is a speak up culture, where we can talk, share ideas even if half baked, share concerns even if they're unpopular, disagree even with someone more senior to us, and even admit mistake, knowing that on the other side of that is improvement as opposed to punishment. And those relationships where there is psychological safety in a speak up culture are marvelous. And the expanse, like the amount of stuff you can share with other human beings or a team to better build relationship, to better build trust and cooperation, to better innovate, like amazing. Similarly, and I'm sure you and others have been in these relationships as well, whether it's toxic or with someone who seems to be on the narcissistic personality disorder spectrum or whatever it might be, where you have relationships personally and professionally with others where there isn't a speak up culture. The way I define a toxic relationship is the more you invest in the relationship, the worse it seemingly gets. Yeah. And so I've been parts of those relationships where there isn't a speak up culture, and you get punished for sharing ideas, even if especially if they're half baked. Don't dare bring up concerns because the only person who's the problem is you. Disagree? How dare you call my idea bad or my baby ugly? And people spend more time hiding mistakes from each other than admitting them because you only get in trouble. So I've been parts of both. And I've seen the destructive, inefficient power of these relationships and these cultures, and the generative, healthy relationships and culture where there is psychological safety in a speak up culture. I want more of these. I want you to have more of these. I want the world to have more of these, because we'll simply live in a better human experience of the world if we do. And so that was the inception of Shed Inspires. And I think a big reason to your first question on why I'm still in this people and leadership business, it's for that. Because again, leadership and culture has an impact on our health and well-being.
I somehow knew it's going to come a full circle. I somehow knew the first.
It was in your design. It was in your design.
And it was so beautiful with every episode of your life. And thank you for being so transparent with me on sharing such intrinsic details about your life, whether it's work, whether it's personal, because you took me on the journey. And like I mentioned, I don't think so I've ever mentioned to anybody that I understand the stutter problem more, because I have seen my brother going through it. And you are absolutely right in saying no leader can be born without having experienced things, whether it was a speech impediment or not. The parts, the points, the times that we've been feeling or felt voiceless. And I don't remember relationships because, again, none, but you reminded me of toxic workplaces in a flash. And yeah, it can have psychological effects. And like you mentioned in your journey in the first job, I don't think so any of the car accidents or cancer or whatever wrong things that were happening were just happening by a fluke. It was a result of the pressure which was just being created. And in any relationship, like you mentioned, if there is no talking, how is that going to be solved?
Totally. You're absolutely right. Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with all of that and everything that you said there, for sure.
I just tried to summarize everything that you said, and I'm actually waiting for the book. I wasn't planning on this, but I really feel like asking you, when is the book coming, The Speak Up Culture? Is there any date in your mind? Is it okay to share? Or
yeah, sure. Yeah, so we're finishing up the manuscript now, and so it should come out in the fall of 2023. So in about a year from now, August or September 2023. Stay tuned. More will be revealed on a release date. We don't have it yet, but we're working hard on it.
Absolutely, I definitely understand with the things that you talked about here. I'm pretty sure that book is going to be a gold mine of more things coming up, and I'll be looking forward to it, and all my best wishes for the book.
Thank you.
I hate to say that we need to wrap up this call, but do you have any parting thoughts, any parting words for me, for the world, for whoever you want, and use this opportunity?
Thank you. I mean, the thing that came to mind is, as sort of you were summarizing very eloquently and beautifully, is, life isn't a roller coaster that only goes up.
Mhm.
And in fact, for anyone who enjoys roller coasters, which I don't really, but how fun would a roller coaster be if it only went up? Like, life is in the ups and downs and the twirls and the undulation and all the things.
Mhm.
And I think leaders and individuals embrace that. I think it's what it means to have a growth mindset. I think of your brother, I think of just anyone, that it is part of the human experience to go through loss and tragedy and suffering and struggle.
Yeah.
And these things can either, and now granted, some of us in society are exposed to more oppression than others, and it's not a level playing field. I'm very aware of that. And I think people who are elevated on that playing field, it is their responsibility to level and bring others up to be able to have access to more opportunities. But I think that it is, we can either see that the problems around us are there to get us, or the problems around us are there to help define us. And while it might be a bit of a privileged point of view, I do think that our hardships and the hard times are there in part to help us grow, to help us build, and to help define who we are and what matters to us, and then live in kind. So I think that's the opportunity for all of us, is to take the antagonists that life and career and all the things throw our way, and use it as a source of information, of data, and of power.
I I can't summarize this better, and I think people will get the message straight. So I will say less, no, speak less and say more. And thank you so much for teaching me very many lessons in this amazing podcast in this brief time, and giving us such wisdoms of not just experience from your first job, but also from your life, Stephen. Thank you so much. And no, I will not call you Stephen. I'll call you Shed.
Very good. Very good. A joy to join you, Shruti, and I hope this conversation helps all your listeners.
Thank you so much.